The following public service program is brought to you by the Metropolitan Library System. And now, Read About It with your host, B.J. Williams.
We have a great show for you today, including a talk with Tucker Smith, who is an artist who's written a book. But first, Susie Beasley will be telling me about one of her favorite books. Susie, what have you brought for us today?
I have brought you a book titled The Power of One, Daisy Bates and the Little Rock Nine by Judith and Dennis Freedom. This book chronicles the life of Daisy Bates, who was one of the Little Rock Nine. And there have been many books written on the Little Rock Nine. Of course, this is the true story, the historical story of 9 individual black people wanting to go to Central High School and having to be escorted by the National Guard. It involved a lot of important people, including sheriffs and National Guard and presidents and attorney generals and lies and threats and all that.
And even a fairly infamous governor, right?
Fairly infamous governor at the time, and then one very, very young person that lived in Arkansas at the time who went on to be president. And 50 years seems like a long time, but when you look in and read this book, The Power of One, you see that it was as if it was yesterday. And the way the book is chronicled, it starts out with Daisy growing up in Arkansas, knowing what the rules are and being a very incorrigible person, wanting to break those rules because why are those rules made for me? Why can't I go and drink at that water fountain? Because I don't see colored or white. I only see me, and I'm thirsty, and this is closer. And her grandfather tried and challenged her to, you have to do this. You have to work within these confines because these are the way things really are. And she always defied that. That's why she was destined to be probably part of the Little Rock Nine.
Well, in a very American spirit, why do those rules apply to me?
That's right, why me? But what she went on to say was that she always asked that question, why? Why does it have to be this way? And then her being part of a historical moment brought all what she had always felt was the right way to go. And so that's why she never gave up that fight, and still to this day talks about civil rights, not just what is going on in our country or Iraq or another country or whatever, that one person can make a difference. That's why The Power of One, that the title tells it, that she was one person, but she had power, she had a voice, and she found her voice, and she still has that voice. This chronicles her story.
And I think it's a good reminder for those of us who were alive at the time and may have just observed from the outside. It's good, but it's helpful. We're getting old enough we can say it's helpful to remind the young people what happened so that they could enjoy what they do enjoy. The title again?
The title again, The Power of One, Daisy Bates and the Little Rock Nine by Judith and Dennis Freedom.
And they can find it at their library and their favorite bookstore.
Yes, they can.
Well, Doug Benton is seated with me, and that means I'm going to tell him about a book.
Okay.
In fact, a book you can check out at your library.
Well, good deal. What you got?
It's called Misquoting Jesus, the story behind who changed the Bible and why.
I think a lot of people do that.
I think a lot of people do that. Yes, they do. Bart Ehrman is the chair of the Department of Religious Studies at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. It's pretty long. That's why I had to read it. He's considered one of the best authorities on the history of the New Testament, the early church, and Jesus. So he knows what he's talking about. He's written a couple of other books about the scriptures. And in fact, he's got a long foreword in this book talking about why he got into this whole thing. He really wanted to know about Jesus and to really read what he thought when he was younger, much younger, the original text, which he found out was Greek. And so he got into Bible study that way and learned Greek and then learned Aramaic and then found out that what he was studying was copies of copies of copies of copies. And none of those copies really agreed with each other completely.
Each was a translation
Each
of
was
another language. Yeah.
right. Well, and not necessarily just a translation. Some of them were the same language, but as he said, the earliest texts written by the early Christians were not even copied by professional scribes. The early Christian groups were very simply organized. They didn't have a lot of money, and usually whoever was copying Paul's letters to the Romans or whatever, because they thought it'd be a good idea for the next group down, was usually the one literate person in the group. And so the group said, well, you can write, so would you make a copy so we can send it? Not professional, maybe not all that good either. Some, I'm sure, were very well educated. Others had just learned enough to get by.
Yeah.
And so mistakes happen. But he says there were also, and you can see this very easily when you study it, there were mistakes that were quite deliberate due to changing times. People, scribes, or the person authorizing the copy of a text, once it got really organized in the church, was an actual institution and entity, they would say things like, Jesus couldn't possibly have meant to say that.
Yeah. What the president meant to say was.
This is a wonderful book about not only about the Bible, but also about how it is studied, and it is written in layman's terms. You don't have to know a great deal, and you will learn a great deal. If you're interested in the Bible, I think this is a very good book, regardless of your viewpoint of it. It's going to give you some real information on how it's studied and the conclusions of a great many of people about the Bible. And as I said, very easy to read. He has a nice, relaxed style, and he explains everything. It's not written for scholars. It's written for you and me.
Yeah.
So I would recommend Misquoting Jesus. You can find it at your library and your favorite bookstore. Coming up next, we have Kids Corner. Rosemary Zarsky will be talking with Kelly Rhea about a book for our young adults.
Hi, we're here with Rosemary Zarsky from the Choctaw Library. Go by there sometime and say hello. She's brought a fabulous young adult book called Wizard at Work. It's by Vivian Van de Velde, and you might have to ask her how you spell that when you look it up. Why did you like Wizard at Work?
Oh, it's a romp. It's for older elementary, lower middle school, but it is a romp. You've got this young wizard who always has to look old when he's teaching other wizards. So he puts a old man spell on.
A disguise on.
That's right.
Okay.
But it's summertime, school's out, and he just wants to have fun in his garden.
Oh.
And people just keep needing his help.
As the wizard?
As the wizard.
Oh.
And he learns over the summer a lot about being judgmental. So it's a good lesson in how not to judge by appearances only, and to really explore
Well,
the
he's
situation.
the epitome of that, since what he really is much different from what others perceive him to be.
Right, and it's kind of fun because, I mean, you get a Shaggy Dog story of how Loch Ness Monster came to be, and several fairy tales are alluded to or outright fractured.
Oh, good. We love that kind of humor.
Yeah, so it's a very light read. I think boys, girls, adults would all enjoy it.
It sounds like a really good one, and on the tails of all this Harry Potter madness, you know, anything with wizards and magic is fun and fantastical.
That's true. And with this one, you don't have as much of the dark magic.
That's best, I think. And when you look at the cover, you really get a sense of how fractured the fairy tales are interwoven through this.
Mm-hmm.
So, would you say that it moved fairly quickly then once you started it?
Oh yes, it was a
quick read.
very, very fast read, and laughing all the way. I mean,
Wonderful. Well, I think this would be a great holiday book. You know, reading out loud to even your older kids and them reading to you is a wonderful activity when it's cold outside. You can't get out much.
that's true.
So we hope that you'll look for this book. either at the Choctaw Library or at any of your other favorite libraries or at your local bookstore. It's called Wizard at Work by Vivian van de Velde.
Hi, I'm Donna Morris, Executive Director of the Metropolitan Library System. 2007 will mark Oklahoma's centennial year. 100 years is a long time, but public libraries have been part of this community since the very beginning. And we're still exactly the same as we've been all along, your primary source for information and entertainment. The delivery methods are different now than in the early days. Today we provide free wireless access, free internet access, DVDs, CDs, free programming for people of all ages, along with the traditional books, magazines, and newspapers. But what hasn't changed is our dedication to helping you find exactly what you need. Librarians continue to be the guides to the up-to-date world of information, and our librarians at MLS are the best in the business. So visit your neighborhood MLS library soon, and as they say in the world of libraries, come check us out.
Well, Doug and I are back, and this time Doug wants to tell me what he's been reading.
Well, nothing quite as intellectual as your book this week.
Well, of course not.
Of course not. But it's a darn good crime story.
Yeah.
It's one of the latest books in this hard case crime series. These are all paperback original books, and so you have to find them in our paperback collection of the libraries. This one is called A Touch of Death. How's that for a nice hard-boiled title? It was written by Charles Williams. It was originally published in 1953 as a paperback original. It's been out of print for 50 years, and these fellows have brought it back, and it's wonderful. It's one of those books I read it and I think, how could this have vanished? You know, it's really a good book. Williams wrote mostly paperback originals in the 50s and 60s. And if he's remembered at all today, it's for a book he wrote called Dead Calm, and that was because it was made into a film a few years ago, an Australian movie. It was the movie that introduced Sam Neill and Nicole Kidman to American audiences. But anyway, this is A Touch of Death. It's typical of Williams' type of work, and it's the story about a young fella. He was a high school football hero, so his face is kind of familiar to a lot of people, just enough so that he's concerned about being recognized when he gets in over his head, which he does quickly. He meets the femme fatale, beautiful young woman, who decides that he's just what she's looking for. And what she's looking for is somebody who will break into a house and try to find $120,000, which is she knows is hidden in this house. A worker embezzled this money. He hid it in his house. He's dead, and no one knows where the money is but her. She's convinced it's in this house. And of course, as everyone would do, he smells a rat. But 50 years ago, $120,000 was a lot of money. I mean, now it's a lot of money. Then it was a lot of money. So he's willing to try this. He gets into the house. He goes in through a basement window. And not only is the house not empty, the late embezzler's wife is in there, but so is some mysterious fellow who keeps trying to kill her in the house. So anyway, he and the wife then get together. One of the things about noir is the shifting alliances through the stories. She tells him, well, no, the money's not here. It's in 3 separate safety deposit boxes in 3 banks under 3 false names, female names. I know them. She says, you know, I remember the banks and I remember the names, but I don't remember which ones go together. So the 2 of them have to form an alliance to figure out a way to get the money out of the banks. It's a really good read. You get to the last page and it'll knock you flat. It's A Touch of Death by Charles Williams. Recommend it highly.
Thanks, Doug. Coming up next, we have MJ Van de Venner, who is Director of Publications at the National Cowboy and Western Heritage Museum. She'll be talking with Linda Edmondson about a book she just recently read.
Linda, welcome.
Thank you.
So nice to have you on Read About It.
I enjoy talking about books.
Well, I know you do. And you're reading a Joan Didion book, and I have to tell you that I met her one time in Chicago, and it was a memorable experience.
I would love to meet her. She's been one of my favorite writers for a long time. But she's written a book called The Year of Magical Thinking, nonfiction.
What a great title.
Yes. Well, and if you know her writing, she's always been very honest and straightforward and insightful. And the idea that she would write a book about magical thinking intrigued me to start with. This is a book about the year after her husband, longtime husband, over 30 years married, after her husband died suddenly of a heart attack.
And he was also a writer.
John Gregory Dunn, he was also a writer, and they wrote very collaboratively. They would share ideas. They were very close and enmeshed. They both worked at home. He died suddenly while their only daughter, an adult daughter, was very, very ill. So the year...
So two traumas.
Yes, two traumas. And the year after that death, she writes so clearly about her progress of grief. And I'm a medical social worker, and I've spent a lot of time working to improve care at the end of life and observing grief and the process people go through with grief and loss. And I've just never read anything better. It's not depressing. It's honest.
Uplifting.
Uplifting in that all kinds of people go through the same kinds of things. And she writes about a lot of research. She's in the emergency room when they came in the ambulance. The social worker there, as they were getting ready to tell her that her husband could not be revived and was dead, the social worker described her to the nurse as a pretty cool customer. And so she did a lot of research as she was working through her grief, and so this book has information about heart disease and the way people deal with grief, and then these beautiful stories of the way she did.
And what is magical thinking?
Magical thinking is, let me tell you this story. Her friends were saying, well, you need to give away his clothes. And she knew intellectually that was true, and she gave away some of them. But she found she could not bring herself to give away his shoes. And she was kind of looking at herself saying, why can't you do that? And she realized it was because on some level she thought he would need them when he came back.
Oh my goodness.
And that kind of magical thinking that this isn't real, this hasn't happened, I'll somehow be able to go back, it's very common. And so she, no matter what kind of a cool customer she was still doing that.
Well, this is a book that sounds like it could be very helpful to many, many people in the same kind of situation.
Yes, and not just people who've lost someone, but people who are trying to help or work with or live with people in grief. The older we get, the more grief and loss we have.
This is true. Thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you.
And come again.
Thank you.
Every year I get to go to the National Cowboy and Western Heritage Museum and talk with some of the winners of the Western Heritage Awards, and also talk with some of the artists at the Prix de West, those who have written books. And last year I attended the Prix de West at what I still call the Cowboy Hall, and talked with Tucker Smith. He is a very well-known painter of the West. He has participated in many shows at the Cowboy Hall and is the winner of the very prestigious Prix de West. He has a recent book out called The Paintings of Tucker Smith. I think you'll enjoy what he had to say about the book. Tucker, what inspired you to create this gorgeous book, The Paintings of Tucker Smith?
Well, I've been painting full-time since 1971, and mainly my wife thought it was about time that we put a book out, and it took a number of years to finally get it together. It's always nice for a producing artist to have something to display his work, and the paintings can only reach so many people, so it's nice to have a larger audience with a book.
Well, one of the comments in here was that you can learn more about Tucker Smith and his paintings through this book than you can simply by visiting a number of galleries where some of his paintings are hanging.
That's true. I wrote the biographical part myself and put a commentary by each painting, and was able then to express my thoughts on art and some of the process.
How did you go about selecting the paintings? Because this is somewhat of a retrospective. We go back quite far into your beginnings as an artist, right up almost to the present day. So,
Yes, first of all, I wanted to include the important paintings that I'd done at different stages in my career, ones that helped my career, and then the others I filled in with paintings that I thought were successful. And also, again, back trying to show the process, I included some that are studies in paintings that maybe were not major paintings, but would be of interest to see how I work.
Well, one of the things I appreciated about this is that for quite a few of the paintings you do include some sketches and field studies that you did, and I've always find it fascinating to be able to compare what the artist did in the field, so to speak, and then what part of that did they take back and put in the creation that they did in the studio?
Yes, I tried to include a number of field studies, and I usually paint them in oil. They're usually about 10 by 12 inches. And in the studio, when I'm designing a painting, I do these little thumbnail sketches and larger sketches, but they're not, they're just that. They are sketches. They're my thinking. It's my thought process put on a page. And so they're rough, and I change them, but I try to come up with the general feeling of what the painting might look like. And I tried to include a number of those too. This is not a how-to paint book, but still I wanted to show the process of getting from idea to finished painting.
Now, each of the paintings, as you mentioned earlier, has a little bit of a commentary beside it. So did you select all of the paintings you were going to use and then sit down and write something about each one, or did the thoughts
Yes.
appear as you selected them?
No, I chose the paintings, and this was a long process. It was over several years that I was choosing paintings, and then I culled them afterwards, and then wrote a write-up on each one. What's very important to me is sense of place. In my paintings, I want someone to feel what I was feeling in that particular location. And so my paintings basically all are a real spot. I don't make up or change drastically the scenery or the landscape, or I'll move rocks and trees around for compositional reasons. But so when I look at someone else's painting, I always say, I wonder where exactly that is. So I tried to put down where the painting was done.
Well, one of the things that you commented about was a certain packing trip that you made up into the mountains to look for the location somebody else had painted.
Yes, back in 1988, I made a trip into the Wind Rivers to find out where Carl Rungius had done a number of his Wyoming paintings, and we were able to do that, and it was a lot of fun. And ever since then, and I go back into the mountains every summer. That is my favorite thing, is to be on a good horse in the mountains is what I'm always wanting to do.
I think that came through very clearly in here, but you obviously take your painting equipment with you, don't you?
Absolutely. Take a camera, but we take, usually I go with some other artists. And we take our paint boxes and paints, and that's the best information, is what's gotten out in the field. And I still find places where I figure out where Carl Rungius painted, and his wonderful wildlife paintings. And he did many, many landscapes, though, that many people don't know about his landscapes. But he was a very important painter of the West, I rank him right up with Russell, Remington, and Rungus.
Well, one of the things I enjoyed, obviously, absolutely beautiful paintings in here, but I also appreciated the essay that you wrote about really what had influenced you the most and what was most important in your life. And then also Mr. Murray wrote something that you mentioned earlier, that he just came and stayed with you for a while and then was able to write this wonderful thing about how you approached your art.
Yes, he came and visited our home and studio and watched me work some, and took him out in the field, and it happened to be fall, so we went after moose, and while I was photographing moose, and so he got a little feel of how I work and what my thoughts are, and his main job was to set the setting of where I work is the greater Yellowstone area, and so he gave the background of the area and of the art, and then up to the time when I started painting.
Well, I think this is a beautiful look at your paintings. I think it also provides for the layperson such as myself a little bit more depth or knowledge. I think it enables us to bring a little bit something more to our the paintings when we look at them, and for that reason alone I've really enjoyed your book.
Well, thank you. I hope that's what it does do. That was the purpose of the book.
Yeah. I'm not sure it's inspired me to go on a pack trip yet, but very close. And I want to thank you so much for being with us.
Well, thank you.
Well, Doug and I are back, and that means it's Writer's Almanac time. Doug has some paper in his hands, which means he's got a date.
Right, so I don't have to remember it. I've got it written down here. March 22nd, 1908 was the birthday of Louis L'Amour in North Dakota. I talked to somebody who was in the publishing business once, and they told me an interesting story about L'Amour, that Bantam Books, the paperback house, which was his primary publisher, was looking for someone they could turn into a superstar. And they approached several Western writers who said, no, that's not my thing, you know. And they went to L'Amour, and he said, sure, let's do it. And that's how he got started, was that the publisher was looking for somebody they could make a star out of. March 20th is the birthday of one of my favorite playwrights, Henrik Ibsen, a Norwegian playwright who, in An Enemy of the People, said, the majority is never right until it does right. I like that.
Okay. Well, on March 21st in 1871, a newspaper writer set out for Africa. The newspaper writer's name was Stanley, and he was looking for a certain Dr. Livingstone. And you can check out everything we've been talking about at your library. Find out more than you ever wanted to know about libraries and what we have at www.metrolibrary.org. Thanks for being with us. We'll see you again next time.